Today in our Copycat series, we are going to be recreating the Olympic symbol. I have up on my screen right now the official Olympic brand guidelines, and this is available from the Olympic website, and the link will be included. So as we look at this iconic symbol, we see 5 colors, which come from the most common colors found in international flags. We have blue, yellow, black, green, and red on a white background, and it was created in 1913. So this is an enduring logo. So let's look at some of the history. If we are on the Olympics.com Olympics brand website, we can see that this was sketched out in 1913. As we continue on to 1986, we can see that there was a variation of the logo where these intersecting rings have a white gap between them. So we're going to make that version as well in this copycat video. And then in 2010, you can see the return to the original logo without that white gap. So we'll be making this one as well. So there is a very in-depth design system, and that is what we will be referencing. You can see the logo system, the colors, and the typography, and access these from the website. In the brand guidelines book, we will be looking at the variation where it's talking about how precise the width of the rings are and the placement of where they overlap. So we will be doing that in Adobe Illustrator. And we will also be looking at the colors. And these are the official Pantone colors as well as Hex RGB CMYK. All right, so to get started, you're going to want to make sure that you have this Olympic brand guidelines PDF. So one thing that I want to show you in Adobe Acrobat is that you can go to File, Document Properties. And what this will do is application, it will show you for a PDF which application made the PDF. Adobe, InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, those PDF files typically allow you to access design elements. And specifically, I find that grabbing vectors out of PDFs that I find for brand guidelines or a poster or an infographic, it's really useful. You want to look at that and know that you can find that in Adobe Acrobat. Let's move over to Illustrator. In the Illustrator, I'm going to say File, Open, and I'm going to navigate to the Olympic brand guidelines, say Open, and now I can flip through and see which page I want to open. And I actually want to open page 11 because that's where I can grab a copy of the final logo. Now I need to select the radio button range, and I'm going to put 11 and say OK. All right. And what you can see is it opens this PDF. It looks for the font, which I don't have, so I can say close, and it brings in that PDF. And if I go to View Outline, I can see that I actually have vector in this file. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Preview. First, I'm going to select everything and say Object, Clipping Mask, Release. All right, so a PDF clips everything together into the shape of the paper, so it's all kind of grouped. Now I can go in with that white arrow and I can select each of those pieces of the ring so I can see how this was created. All right, so I can kind of move things out of the way, click and drag across. Now I have the Olympic logo. I can group it, Command G, copy it, Command C, and I can really paste that I want, right? So now I can use that logo. So that is a really useful tip for any kind of brand that you're working with and you need to grab vectors, whether it's icons, logos, illustrations. That's a really great way to kind of grab it. All right, so that's just as a reference. Let's look at making rings. I'm going to come into Layers, so Window, Layers, and I'm going to lock this current layer, and say new layer, and we'll call this art. So this will be our layer. There are two different ways, just as there are a multitude of ways to do almost anything you want to in design, to make a ring. So one way will be a circle. You can make a circle from the midpoint or from a corner. If I hold down Option on my Mac, I can come to about the center, hold down Shift to keep it a circle constrained, and go ahead and make it. Now we can look to align. I can hold down Shift again from the side, and we can make it just about the perfect size. All right, so with this shape, I am going to go ahead and switch from its fill to its stroke, and I can see it is not actually the perfect shape here. There we go. All right, so one of the things that we can do is edit, paste in front. And now I can hold down my Option and Shift in Illustrator on a Mac, and from a corner, bring in the circle to meet the inside. Okay, so now I have two strokes. Now I can open Pathfinder. So that's Window, Pathfinder. And I can say minus front. Now, what this should do is make a shape for me that I can now fill in. All right, so I now have a ring. Now we can duplicate that ring. I can do that with my key command of hold down with my black arrow selected, so my selection tool, hold down Option on my Mac. If I hold down Shift at the same time as I drag, it also constrains that it's not moving it up or down. It's only moving it left and right. And now I can Alt-Shift because we're moving it down. Okay, get this lined up. And then Alt-Shift to keep it constrained. Start my Alt, then hold down my Shift and move it over to the side. That is one way that you could build it. Let's move these out of the way. So I'm going to, using my black arrow, Shift click to grab each item, and then I can do Command G for a group, and I can drag it down. So another way that we can make a solid fill circle is to draw a circle. So I've gone to my circle ellipse tool, and I'm actually going to put it in a color so we can see it better. All right, so from here, I'm going to Shift, and I have made my circle. Now I will shift it smaller. I can turn it to a stroke. Now I can actually see that it fits the right size. We're going to go to Window, Stroke. You might already have it up. I can see it's here. And we will make the line be on the inside. And we will start to expand the weight until it reaches the width that we want. All right, and we may not have this quite aligned, so we will grow just a tiny bit. Okay. Now, this is a stroke, and we want to be working with fills. So your next step, if you're using this technique, is to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and that will turn it into a shape. All right, so now you can see it switched from stroke to fill. And what's important is I'm going to undo. My circle with the stroke is selected, so it's active, And that's when I go to Object, Expand, Appearance, and now it's a fill. Now I can do Command C, Command V, that copies another one, and I can align it this way as well. Um, you can also use the key commands like we did before. So we have our option, then I hold down Shift and I can pull it over. All right, so that is two ways to make the actual ring shape in Illustrator. Next, we're going to work on color. So for color, I'm going to bring in the brand guidelines again. So I'm going to go to File, Place, grab my guidelines, show import options. So you want that to be checked so you can choose the page. We are looking for page 18. Perfect. Okay. I'm going to place it beside. Wonderful. All right. So now I see each of the colors. So when I'm working with colors, I can do a couple things. One is I can use my direct selection tool, grab a circle. Then I can go to my eyedropper tool and select from the shape that I want. All right. So that is a pretty easy way to do it. So let's go ahead and use the direct select arrow and our eyedropper tool to select each color. So we have gold, and then we will go ahead and use the eyedropper. Make sure you have the ring selected first. Go back to your eyedropper. Now we have black, direct select, eyedropper green, direct select, grab your eyedropper, and red. Now I'm going to ungroup them so that I have them each there. All right. So the next thing is going to be looking at, so for each color, if I have a fill, I can double click on it and we can see that we can plug in the RGB, the CMYK, and the hex for that number, the number for that color. So we can always reference the brand guidelines and put in, I have hex here. So if I wanted to come into my red, I could double click and paste in my color, right? So that's another way that you can precisely get the colors. All right. So once we're here, we have two key options for how to intersect or intertwine these rings. So I'm going to show you both so that you have that in your tool set. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this artboard. So I've clicked on artboard and I'm going to hold down the option, which gives me that double arrow, and then just drag. Again, this is on a Mac and that allows me to make a copy. All right, so for this first one, I'm going to show you the traditional way of how you would do this. So you're going to select all of your rings. And we're going to use Pathfinder, Window Pathfinder. And you're going to use the Divide tool. And what this does is everywhere there's an overlap, it's going to create its own shapes. So I click Divide once. You can see that the weight of this red outline actually changes a little bit when I do that. But other than that, you really can't see a change. Now what you can do is click off so that nothing is selected. And if I say View Outline, you can see I can actually select just an area now. So every area where there was an overlap, there's a shape. And I can get to it with the direct select arrow. So if I use the black arrow, I'm still getting everything. I need to go to my white arrow and I need to click on the edge of it, right? So I can see that that selected it. So in preview, I can select on the color. In outline, I have to select on the edge. So I can see I have this color selected. And if I'm referencing the logo, let's come back so that we can see our logo. And we can see blue is on top. All right, so that means we need this to be blue. So I'm going to use my eyedropper tool and make it blue. All right, when we look at the black, the yellow becomes on top. So now I'm going to use my white arrow. I click off, I go to this black, and I make it yellow. I can also click, there we go. All right. Now for the yellow, it overlaps the blue here. When we look here, the black is overlapping. That's perfect. Okay, the black overlaps the green. You've got that, but the green needs to overlap the black. So we're going to take this piece and make it green. All right, so now let's look at the red. We have green on top and then green behind. So we're going to take this white piece and change the color, green on top and then green behind. All right, so we have the interlocking rings now, but we have these individual shapes and we don't want them. So now what we're going to do is shift click the pieces that are green and unite them. Now I can click in and say unite. And also I want to make sure, so this piece with this piece and this piece, so I'm shift clicking using the white and unite. And you can say I can get rid of all of those lines. We want it to have no horizontal lines inside the shape. Okay. So I have red selected. I need to select this piece too and then say unite. So now I have black selected. I'm shift clicking all of my black pieces, clicking where it is actually black, and then I'll click unite. Same for yellow. All the pieces, unite. And same for blue. All right, so now if we look at view outline, you can see there are no longer the lines that were showing the intersection. So that is one method. Let's look at a second method. So in newer versions of Illustrator, there is a tool for this kind of intersecting, and it's called Intertwine. If I select all of my shapes, so I can do that with the black arrow, select over, and remember this is with a new set of circles that duplicated one that we made in the artboard below. We'll go up to Object, Intertwine, Make. Now what this does is give us a lasso. And we're actually going to click where we want it to be intertwined. So if we want the yellow to come on top here, I click here. Beautiful. If I want the green to come on top here, I click here. If I want the green on top here, I click here. Pretty amazing, right? Now, let's see what that actually did. We can select still just the shape, right? We can change the intersecting. So if I grab just this yellow, you can see it did actually chop it, but so you do need to be careful how you move it. But it also lets me grab it as a complete ring still. All right, so you do have these options that you can use. Intertwine now under Object. Now you can also release and edit. Okay, so if we release, it stops the intertwining. If I undo, you can see it brings it back. All right, now we're going to flip to a beautiful minimalist poster from the Tokyo 1964 Olympics. And in this Olympic, they used Helvetica, all capital font, and the circle from the Japanese flag. And you can see that the Olympic symbol has a white stroke that is separating each of the rings. It's truly beautiful. So we're going to work on how would you add a stroke around these intersecting rings in Illustrator. and I will show you also, this is its application on the posters from 1964. This was actually the first Olympic Games when it was a non-Western nation hosting, and also the first time that there was an official identity program with a set of standards. So that makes it really unique from a graphic design standpoint as well. I'm going back to the version where we used the Pathfinder. This is my Olympic symbol. And I'm going to select it all. And where it says no stroke, I'm going to click and give it a white stroke. Then we're going to look at our stroke window, which if you don't have it open, it's window stroke. And we're going to give it 3 points. And with your stroke, you can decide if it's centered, if it's on the inside, if it's on the outside. Okay, so we want it centered for this effect. A stroke is geometric. It is not a fill, right? And so we actually want to expand this so that we have actual shapes. So next we're going to say Object, Expand. And you can see I have both fill and stroke checkboxed. That's perfect. You're going to say OK. An easy way to kind of see if we say View Outline, you can see there's actually a bunch of kind of lines happening here. All right. But when we preview it, it just looks white. You can see there's actually, you can see this kind of, it overlaps. And we need to do the same thing that we did with our colors. We need the white to overlap and be gotten rid of, basically. All right. So what we're going to do is select everything again. And once it's expanded, we're going to do divide. Okay, so now we can come in. We've divided. I'm going to select something that's white. I can see it has a white fill. I'm going to say select same appearance and then delete. So what that did is selected all the white. Let's see if we still have other things. View outline. Okay, so you might have some divides that you would be able to see if you go into outline that you don't want. So I can kind of click across those and say unite, and now that's one shape. I can do that here too. Clicking across and say unite, maybe here, unite. And we're just trying to simplify. We can do it in this view as well, but it's harder to see, so that's why I switched to outline. Unite. Divide sometimes makes hidden shapes that you don't need. So if there are these extra shapes inside that are kind of left over by the outline that we had, I would delete them. So I have this selected. I'm using my white arrow. I'm grabbing right on the stroke. If I say preview, I can't see it, but it's really there, right? So I want to delete it and have the cleanest logo design that I can. So if there's any of those extra shapes, you're going to come in and you'll see if I delete once on my keyboard, it deletes just what was selected and then everything's highlighted. So you want to keep clicking delete on your keyboard until the entire shape is gone, where nothing is still selected. Right, and this is a cleanup part. Okay, so now if I look and I'm zooming out, Command minus, I have a nice gap between each one. If I come to preview, I can see that gap is there consistently everywhere. And so that is how, if you were intertwining circles, letters, or in this case, demoing how to do this with the Olympic symbol, that's how you would add that gap between overlapping lines. And let's go ahead and use our black arrow and pull the logo over onto a different color background, and you can see it truly is transparent, right? We can see the color behind, in between, that it's the gray. All right, so one last thing to talk about for this Olympic logo is just how precise this was designed. So you can see that they're actually using a 2:24 ratio, meaning that one ring is equal to 12 times the thickness of a ring. When we're using a grid, and when you're designing, you will use a grid, you can see that 2 squares, 1, 2, is the thickness of the circle at the middle. And then it will be 24 over to the side of that circle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, right? And it's the same from the top. And that same grid is used to be able to give breathing room around the logo. They're using the term isolation. And when we look at this, we're saying a quarter of the ring. So a quarter of 24. So 6 across is how much extra space needs to be above, to the left, below, and to the right. So that margin around the logo. And then there's also a minimum size, and that's 8 millimeters or 30 pixels. So you're saying the logo symbol, it just doesn't hold up any smaller, so keep it that minimum. So bringing you back to thinking about brand guidelines and the precision of using a grid, and why we use official logos rather than recreate them ourselves. But I hope this copycat video helped you think about how you could use lines and letters, intersect them, intertwine them, find colors from brand books, and just gave you a good sense of how you could recreate the Olympic logo. Thanks for watching this copycat video. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment about what you liked, what I can improve, or what topics you'd like me to cover next. Or, if you'd rather, take a moment to reflect and share the simple thought. What brought you joy today? Until next time, have a great day and happy designing.